Hi, Pete's fans. Welcome to another episode of For Pete's Sake, your podcast on everything Peterborough Pete's. And we are excited to bring you this episode because for the first time this season, we are recapping a Peterborough Pete's victory. It is about time, a long time coming. I am so pumped for these guys that they got into the win column. They played a solid game, and I'm hyped up. I think there will be more to come. Can I get a Ric Flair woo from you, Reese? Can I get a Ric Flair woo?
We're in the win column.
We are in the win column. I love it. I'm fired up. We're going to have much more of that. Anyways, enough about that for now because we don't want to spoil the whole episode for you. But we are going to recap that game. We're going to recap the other 3 games. The Pete's had a 4-game week. They played some other good hockey as well, which we will highlight for you. There were as always some standouts in the 3 stars selection, and then there was some OHL news. Seemed like a couple little interesting storylines this week. Some players returning to the league and some overall news regarding NCAA hockey and the CHL. We will have our thoughts and analysis on that as well. So without further ado, we are going to dive in. We are going to start. Here's Tucker. He is pumped about the Pete's win as well, and he is excited, so he is joining us today. Tucker, the Pete's fan pup. He is in this podcast with us today. So anyways, like I said, we are going to dive right in, starting off with some news from the Under-17 Hockey Challenge. The Peterborough Pete's had 2 players there. It was Colin Fitzgerald and it was defenseman Gowan as well. Their top 2 picks from this past draft. Both players on the same team. They made it to the gold medal game and unfortunately couldn't come up with a win, but each recorded a silver medal. So a great tournament experience for those guys. Unfortunately, Gowan did suffer an upper body injury in that gold medal game, but nice to see those guys go and have success in a tournament against some high-level hockey players. So,
absolutely.
Great stuff, great stuff. Anyways, now we will move on to our game recaps. As I said, it was a busy week. And Matt's going to take us through that first one. There were 4 games we got to recap for you. Another Tuesday game. So we had our first one against our arch rivals, the Oshawa Generals.
Yeah, this one was it was a great game for the Pete's. They did end up losing in a shootout, but the first 2 periods of this game, the Pete's really went toe for toe with Oshawa. They were playing well defensively, they were back checking well, they were finishing their chances, they were limiting the amount of time in the box. They were doing all the things that they needed to do to beat an upper echelon team like Oshawa. Mm-hmm. So the Pete's were actually in control of the game. They were up 3-1 after 2 periods of play. The shots on net were actually 25-8-19 in favor of the Pete's. McCallum made his return in this one. It was Bryant's first game as a Pete. So it was good to see them in the lineup, and McCallum got an assist on the opening goal, so it made his presence known early, set up Paget on a beautiful one-timer, and then McIntyre scores, and Levesque got another goal, which was nice to see, nice backhand goal. So they were in control going into the third, and then like we've seen sometimes this season in the third, the other team just seemed to say we're not going to lose this game, and the Pete's didn't really match.
Yeah, for whatever reason, like the Pete's have actually had a number of games where they play with that lead.
Yeah.
Sometimes even late in games like this one, like into the third, and then for whatever reason, like aren't great at holding them yet. It's something you have to learn.
Yeah.
It's something that comes, with reps in the league, like learning how to play with the lead is a skill. So something they need to work on for sure.
Yeah. So Oshawa came out in the third, scored like 12 seconds in. So it's 3-2, and then they just started drawing a lot of penalties using their speed. The Petes took a lot of like tripping, slashing penalties, which you take when you're kind of not moving your feet, which allowed Oshawa to outshoot the Petes 16-5. And you saw the overtime. Oshawa had the puck, I think,
Oh yeah.
for the whole entirety of the overtime. Maybe a few seconds the Petes had it, but it
Yeah.
was all Oshawa from the third to the shootout. And then in the shootout, Caden Taylor is pretty much automatic for the Petes. When
Yeah.
he goes, he scores.
And he does like a similar move, but
Yeah.
it's just like his release is so quick that
Yeah.
it's hard to stop. Like it's so impressive that I have so much faith in him when he
Yeah.
comes up as a shooter. I haven't had that in a while.
Yeah.
But he's just like, it's like you said, almost automatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he scored, but Seneca and Barlow's shot for the Generals, and they both scored on their 2 attempts. So the Petes did drop this one 4-3. But again, they were in it with the top team in the East. They just couldn't that killer instinct is kind of something they are working to develop.
Yep.
And we'll see how that goes. Will they kind of be like Windsor last year where they find it and then make a run, or will they kind of gradually make that step like kind of into next year? It's hard to know, but they're making good strides.
For sure.
You have to play well to be in those positions, and they're doing that. Now it's just finishing off when you get into that position.
Exactly.
And that's the next step this team needs to take. And then the only other thing in this game is Paget got drilled at one point, and McCallum fought O'Toole on the Generals, and it was a spirited fight. It was a good 2-3 minutes of guys throwing big punches, and it was nice to see him step up because Paget's had a few injuries, and McCallum jumped right in and wasn't intimidated. He never is intimidated, but it was just nice to see that the unity and the spirit of the team is they have each other's backs. So that's always a positive. So again, a close loss, you get a point, and then you move forward. I guess that's all you really can do after this game. I think it probably was a little frustrating for them because they had it right there. But again, they got a point, so they're taking good strides.
Yep.
Like
Absolutely.
we said, it's that killer instinct now that is that last part of the puzzle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, but then from there they go on their Michigan trip up to play 3 games, which is a busy stretch. So they go into Saginaw. James Go, a former Pete, actually scored like super early in this one. It was like less than 5 minutes into the first period. But the Petes from then on didn't let a goal in for the rest of the game. And they actually looked like they frustrated Saginaw a lot. Like their big players, Misa,
Yeah.
Breaka, like those guys that they had that have won the Memorial Cup that are like high draft picks or going to be high draft picks. They didn't give them space. They drew a lot of penalties. They kept them outside. Like the shots were in favor of Saginaw. It wasn't a lot difference, but they were all from the out wide with no rebounds and defense blocking guys out in front of the net.
Yeah, the quality of the shots for Saginaw wasn't high. And I agree.
Yeah, so they...
Strong defensive effort.
Yeah, and they kind of waited for their moments, and when they got their moments, so they got a 2-on-1, and Francis Parrish buried his second of the year, which is nice to see. And then they get a late goal in the third, under 3 minutes left. Carson Cameron scores, and the Petes get their first win of the year. And they were just elated. You could see it, the kind of the pressure, all that's built in. They let it out, and they were giving Bowen, who's been a big part of this team this year, like a lot of congratulations for what he's done so far this season.
Yeah.
But it was just nice to see them go get a win as a team.
Absolutely. And
Because they deserved it.
It's a long time coming.
Yeah.
We've been hyping them up during their record is still very ugly, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
They're still 10 points back, but you could tell at some point it was going to break. It was going to break their way, and they were going to get rewarded. And I couldn't be happier for it to happen against a solid Saginaw team on a road trip.
Yeah.
I really liked what I saw.
Yeah.
So let's keep those good vibes going.
Yeah.
Anyways, like Matt said, it was a Michigan trip, which means the next stop was one night later in Flint to take on the Firebirds. Unfortunately, couldn't quite keep the good vibes going. The Petes did drop this one 4-1. Looked like it might be another strong Pete start. Within the first minute, Graydon Strohack, former Flint player, appeared to score his first OHL goal, but it was disallowed due to goaltender interference. A tough call. There was contact. Page was trying to screen the goalie, did slightly bump the goalie. I don't know. It was one of those gray areas where the goalie has to be able to at least make a play on the puck, and you could maybe argue it either way. But it was a tough call, and it wasn't malicious or anything, but there was contact. So unfortunately, that one was brought back, keeping the game scoreless. Flint would see some momentum, scoring 2 goals to take a 2-0 lead into that second period. The Petes would come back and get it close again. Liam Lads made a great stretch pass to new guy Gavin Bryant. He went in and he ripped home a high, I think it was high glove side, top shelf. Great shot on the breakaway. Nice to see him finish. The guys were happy for him. And that made it 2-1. Also in the second, Ryder McIntyre, he got tangled up with a player, given a match penalty for slew footing. Again, I'd like to see the replay on this one. I mean, they've obviously reviewed it. Otherwise, you know, they take a look at it and see if there's any suspensions worthy. So they have done their due diligence and looked at it. When I initially saw it, I was like, I don't know. It seemed a little incidental. I am very biased as a Petes fan. Even the Flint Firebirds announcer was like, I don't know if that's slew footing. Maybe it's kind of just like an interference or a roughing call. But they did look at it. He did end up getting tossed, and he received a match penalty for slew footing. Rest of the game was pretty tight defensive coverage. They were kind of locking down the Petes from getting any momentum going. Very few offensive opportunities. Flint would score another 2 goals into the third, with the second being an empty netter. So 4-1. Petes didn't play horrible. Looked like they might have been a little bit tired, maybe coming off the game before where they worked incredibly hard, and you have a tough back-to-back with the game the night before. But yeah, they were unable to keep the great vibes going. Again, some good things we saw were that pass from Liam Lads, Gavin Bryant, and the guys continued to work hard. They weren't totally blown out in this one by any means, just unable to keep those winning vibes going. But they keep playing strong. They'll be back in the win column soon enough. And then 2 days later, they cross back over the border and they play the Windsor Spitfires, one of the top teams in the league. Graydon Strohack must have been upset about having his goal called back the game before, because he got the Petes on the board first, recording his first OHL goal. Good for Graydon Strohack. He's been a positive role model on this team. He's a tough customer back there. We're happy he's on the Petes, and very nice to see him get rewarded for his hard work and determination, getting his first OHL goal. Some penalty trouble crept back in. The Petes did give Windsor 7 power play opportunities. Even when you don't get a goal against, it's tough to get a rhythm going, because you know some of your guys don't play PK, so they're sitting for long stretches. You can't really develop your 5-on-5 system, so just tough, kind of choppy game when that happens. Windsor ended up tying the game on a power play in that second period. Game was actually tied till midway through the third. Easton Rye was the story in this one. He was making his first start of the year, and he was incredible. He kept them in it midway through the third. They were being outshot by Windsor and a strong Windsor team. There was a stretch, unfortunately, where they would give up 2 goals in 3 minutes in that third period, which put Windsor ahead for good, and then they added another empty net goal for a second consecutive 4-1 game. Again, Pete's, I think, coming off a busy road trip, a little bit fatigued. Easton Rye, incredible, and Graydon Strohack, nice to get the goal.
Yeah, for sure.
So overall thoughts, awesome to be in the win column. I mean, they had 4 games, so there's, that's 8 points up for grab. They lost one in a shootout. Could have gone either way.
Yeah. Flint, they're right there.
Flint, yeah, they were there for stretches. They even were tied in the third in Windsor. So each of these games, it could have gone another way. And then, of course, they get that elusive first win in Flint. I like that the boys are continuing to battle. I like that the boys seem to be upbeat. I like that they're celebrating each other when things go well. They were happy for Strohack with his first goal. They were happy with, they were giving Easton Rye some stick taps. They were super happy for Zach Bowen getting his first win after the year he's had. Because it showed it in the, the Flint game. His record, he had 1 win, but he's above 900 save percentage. That just tells you something about his play. So nice to see them celebrate as a team and bond a little bit on that road trip. I'd just like to throw in, it's a couple of weeks now. We've seen him in action. Gavin Bryant, nice goal. It's a tricky situation, with his overage status. Obviously, you have 4 guys, you can only play 3. So the guy, odd man out for the first 3 games was Lefebvre, and it's tough. Like, you don't really think you'll bring out Mali, he's the captain. And then McIntyre was on a pretty good hot streak where he'd scored a couple consecutive games, and then you want this new guy to kind of get used to playing with his team.
Yeah.
He's apparently, a great guy in the room. You want him around the boys, but I mean, it's tough for Lefebvre too, because he was, started out the year leading scorer. He's got the speed that kills. Like, I think that element is something that he brings to the Petes that the Petes really need, is that high-end speed that draws penalties, that gives a lot of offensive chances. He finishes well. He's been part of a winning culture. He was part of that winning squad a couple of years ago. So it's tough to see him sitting out. It is part of the numbers game. So I don't know. It's when I first saw the trade with Gavin Bryant, I like what I'm hearing about the guy as a player, as a character. I was a little bit like, it's tough again. You've just forced yourself into some tough decisions as an overager, and I continue to trust the brain power and the coaches. But I don't know. I wonder if we see Lefebvre work himself back in. I thought he had a couple of good chances in that Windsor game where he did use his speed to generate some offense, and then McIntyre goes down, gets suspended for any stretch of time with the slew foot, or if there's injuries. It's always good to have depth, but you hate to see guys that don't deserve to sit out, that have given you kind of a couple years and look like they could be leaders sitting out. So again, that's all I'm gonna, not anything negative about Gavin Bryant, not anything negative about McIntyre, Lefebvre, or Mali. It just creates another little roster wrinkle that you have to keep an eye on. The Petes knew that, trading for it. Again, trust them. They know more than me. They know what they're doing. But that's just, it was kind of an interesting side note to these 3 games was, Lefebvre, who I think could really help in the top 6, not playing, and then, drawing back in, and it's interesting to see where they'll go from here.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm
I would have loved to see him in overtime against Oshawa when it's 3-on-3.
Yeah.
To have a guy like Lefebvre up front.
Yeah, with the wheels.
Not to take anything away from McIntyre, because I think bringing Brian in and having that internal competition probably sparked him.
Yeah.
Because he's gone off since Brian's been brought in.
Yeah.
He's gotten 4 goals since then, and he's playing more confident.
True.
He's blocking shots, so it's having the right effect.
Very true.
I'm biased because Lefebvre is probably my favorite forward on the team.
Right.
I'd love to see him in there. I like what he does.
Yeah.
You don't get invited to Detroit's main camp, if you're not highly skilled.
Yep.
Not that any of these guys aren't highly skilled, but it's too bad they're overagers because I'd love to see all four of them in the lineup.
And I imagine, if the Petes are in the same position they are come trade deadline time, maybe one or two of them are gone to a contending team. So maybe this is just a temporary thing. But we've addressed it already. Like we said, tough for a guy to have to sit out. Tough for any of them to have to sit out. So just part of the OHL's rules and something the Petes have to keep an eye on going forward.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So we'll go into our 3 stars of the week here. Our first star is actually going to be Liam Lads.
That's your boy.
He got 3 points this week, so he got a point in 3 of the 4 games. Got an assist in 3 of the games, which is a bonus for Lads because you don't really expect him to produce offensively. I don't think that's his role on the team, but he's looking more comfortable pushing the puck up and kind of jumping in when he finds the right spot. And he's actually only -1 on the season, which is pretty incredible for how many goals the Petes have given up and how much he's relied on in the defensive end. The fact that he's only sitting at that, I think, speaks volumes to the defenseman and the value that he brings to this team. You won't always see him on the score sheet, but I don't know if there's a defenseman other than Strohack that throws their weight around as much as Lads. I don't know if you've seen that or agree with that comment. But
I agree.
And he doesn't take a lot of penalties.
No.
So he plays the game physically, but he doesn't take himself out of games with bad calls.
Yep.
And he's almost even on a team that's goal differential isn't great.
Yeah.
And he gets the odd point for you, and he has the ability to make those big passes like we saw against
For sure.
Flint, right? So to me, he's doing what he needs to do for the Petes.
Agreed.
And he's growing with, I think him and Strohack are actually a great pair.
I agree.
I really like when they play together.
Yep.
But for me, he's the first star of the week.
Agreed. Couldn't have said it better.
Easton Rye is our second star. He got that injury in training camp and hasn't really been able to play. And he went in against Windsor, which isn't an easy task. Kind of did the same thing last year, went into London. They threw him in London last year.
And
won
he got that
game.
win. I remember that. Yeah.
And this year he starts his first game against Windsor, one of the top teams, and makes 31 saves and was they were high scoring chances. The shots could have been higher, but Windsor was doing a lot of odd man rushes, close shots that were in good scoring chances, and Rye was up to the task.
Yeah.
So it's good to see because you got to find out if Rye is a starter or what he's going to be for this team, and he did nothing but put himself in a good position off his first start anyway.
Agreed. Yep.
Third one, we're going to go here with Francis Parrish. I didn't know how good he was going to be when he made the team out of camp, but he's done everything you can ask. He goes to the net. He's pesky. He's scored twice already.
Yeah.
Big goals. He tied the game against Saginaw on a 2-on-1.
Yeah.
He's not shy. He's
he works. Yeah. He works so hard.
Yeah, and he's been if there's a guy out of the lineup, he's usually moved up.
Yeah.
Which tells you all you need to know how the coaches view him as a player.
Absolutely.
And they have him playing with Taylor.
Yeah.
And they actually work really well together because Parrish kind of gets the puck and goes to those corners and finds Taylor really well. So I'm interested if that pairing continues as they grow kind of into more older players.
Yep.
Because I think they might have something there.
Yeah,
but I think he's been a few weeks where I could have put him in there. He's been close to being that third star, and I think this week he rightfully earned to be the third star of the week for the team this week, in my opinion.
For sure.
But there was a lot of performances. You could have put a lot of guys in here.
Yep.
But for me, those are the 3 that I thought were the stars of the week. I don't know if you have any honorable shout-outs that you saw or...
I like Strohack's game.
Yeah.
I was disappointed to see his goal disallowed. I liked how he bounced back. I would agree with the 3 you picked. I thought they were very strong. You could shout out Gavin Bryant getting a nice breakaway goal as well. He seems to step in all right. So, but I like those 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep it going and have another good week full of some stars next week.
Yeah. And so let's do our teddy bear count update here.
Teddy bears.
So it was a 2 for 1 week.
Yes, it was.
Those 4 games. So the Pete scored 8 goals, which takes it to 16 bears for the week.
Totaling how many bears? 47 bears. How's the collection going?
It's good.
Good. We getting
I'm
there?
excited. Yeah, we're getting there.
Getting there. Nice. Yeah, that game's coming up quick.
Yeah.
Again, just a reminder, December 5th, if you guys have not started thinking about getting your Bears, get your Bears.
Yeah.
It's an awesome, awesome thing they do to give some toys to those that need them. So come to the game, cheer on the boys, and throw your Bears at the other team's bench. I mean, onto the ice, of course. Yeah, I didn't say that first part.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's go around the league a bit. Couple worthy news stories. The first one, Pete's will not be happy to hear that Brady Stonehouse was returned to the Ottawa 67s. He is a pesky thorn in the side. He's been that way for a couple of years, dating back to their playoff matchups a couple of years ago and last year. And I was hoping he was gone for good, but he is back with the 67s. So we'll have to give him the welcoming he deserves when he comes to Peterborough. Let's not make it easy on him. Kitchener lost its first regulation game since September, which date is a stretch of 16 games. They are on some sort of run. Yeah. Like we said, that kind of came out of nowhere for us. Yeah. We thought they were a team that might take a step back and have to retool a bit. Not so. They've been a very strong team. A week of lots and lots of high-scoring game. There were 8 players that got hat-tricks this week, so a lot of players showing their high-level skill. Kingston in the East, Kingston, Oshawa, Barrie, Niagara, they're starting to pull away in the East a little bit, starting to separate themselves from the other 4 Eastern Conference teams. In the West, London, Boo, Kitchener, like we said, Windsor and Erie are those top echelon teams in the Western Conference. Just back to the Eastern Conference a bit of surprising news for me is the Steelheads in Brampton, who I pegged maybe to even win the conference. They had a rough week. They lost 3 straight, gave up 19 goals. They're actually a 500 and in 8th place right now. I looked up, some of their players are putting up decent numbers. Raycroft has had a good stretch, and then Porter Martone scoring at a goal per game, not a point per game, a goal per game. So they've got the guys. They're Ivanovic is he's he doesn't have horrible numbers. It's just so I don't know what's going on in Brampton. I would expect that they'll probably
turn it around,
creep up. I think there's too much talent there for them to stay down too long. Who knows? But I was surprised to see them in 8th. I thought they would be a team that would have top level. It would be in a top position right from the get-go. And then also, almost as surprising as the team right behind them, the Brantford Bulldogs are currently in 9th place now, 10 points up on the Petes.
They were on a 5-game losing streak before they won, right?
Yeah, so they're hitting a rough patch too. It's another team I kind of pegged to maybe finish right behind the Steelheads or kind of maybe in that top 5 in the Eastern Conference. And so far, it hasn't worked for them. So we're still kind of early in the season. There's a road ahead for sure, but that's tough. A tough stretch for some teams that I thought would be higher in the standings. So we'll see where they go from there. Also, I think we forgot to mention as part of the Flint game. Aiden Young was a last-minute scratch. So I think an injury there as well, unfortunately. He's such a fun player to watch, one of my favorite guys, and they certainly missed him in the top 6. So we missed saying that earlier, but we wish him a speedy recovery. Hopefully he is not gone for too long. Other thing I wanted to touch on, you've probably heard the news by now. Some big news with the NCAA and the CHL. So previously, if you weren't aware, CHL was considered a professional league, which meant as soon as you played even a preseason game in the CHL, you were no longer eligible for NCAA hockey. They have now classified the CHL as an amateur league, meaning you can now join the NCAA having played some time, even some regular season games in the OHL Quebec Major Junior League, or WHL. So a very, very interesting and a very big news. It'll be interesting to see how exactly it affects things. My take on it, I have to dive in and fully understand all the ins and outs and logistics. I don't know if they're still working on some of them, but my thought is it's going to attack or bring in more talent to the CHL. I think, teams that, didn't draft guys because the players had said, look, I'm going NCAA. I want to keep my status. I'm not going to report.
Yeah.
They now don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
They can bring a player in. He can play a couple years in the OHL. And then if he decides, NCAA is his long game,
Yeah.
he goes to the NCAA when he's at that age or after. So I think it benefits the players, number one. They now don't have to choose either or. They get to develop in what I think is probably the strongest development league in North America, in the CHL.
Yep.
And then if they could still want to do college hockey, they still have that option. I think it's tough for the junior leagues like the Junior A. A lot of players that didn't want to give up their eligibility previously would go play a couple of years there. And then once they were at university age, they would go report to their NCAA team. So I think that league may feel it a little bit. One thing that's interesting is I think it sneakily helps the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League a bit because in my mind, I don't know if you agree, I think the OHL and WHL are like considered a little bit stronger at this point than the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. It's not always that way. They've had some great players come through there, Crosby, McKinnon.
Yeah.
Like there's great players from the Quebec Major Junior League. But if you look at the United States, New England has a ton of hockey players come through there. It's a feeder program with Boston and out east they have Maine, and a lot of guys play on that East Coast. And that would geographically be a Quebec Major Junior Hockey League feeder system. So I think potentially you see that league kind of beef up its rosters. The things that I want to keep my eye on is the rules regarding when players can go.
Yeah.
My understanding is it's going to be pretty open.
Yeah.
So right now, players sign contracts in the OHL. I don't know whether they're working on making those contracts shorter or putting contracts with a stipulation in place that they can leave to the NCAA when that opportunity arises. I think it's an interesting opportunity for OHL players because you can draft someone whose goal is I'm going to come play for you for a couple of years and then I'm going to the NCAA, and it gives you 2 years to change that player's mind.
Yeah.
Like it'll be interesting to see if a player comes to an organization like Peterborough, and they like the coaches and they like the city and they're developing well here. Maybe they can defer their NCAA till after they're done, or maybe they decide, my development's best here. I'm going to stick around. So it's an interesting opportunity for player development and coaches to convince players to stay. I think I don't think we'll see a huge mass exodus right off the bat. We have seen some players that are taking advantage. There's a couple guys that from Kitchener, one of the goalies, I think was it Parsons? Yeah, he's in the NCAA. So it'll be fascinating to see how soon players start taking those opportunities. But the one thing I did mention, it's considered an amateur league now. The players that are still unable to play in the NCAA would be those that signed their NHL contracts. So if a player gets drafted and signs their entry-level deal, they can be returned to the OHL without burning a year of their eligibility. They can't go to the NCAA. They have to be unsigned in the NCAA. The rights would still be owned by that NHL team. And then another thing is they'll have to figure out kind of the timeline as well, because if you drafted a CHL player before, you had 2 years to sign him before he can go back in the draft, or he can become a free agent. In the NCAA, it was 4 years.
Yeah.
So now that they're kind of overlapping, they'll have to figure out, is it a certain amount of time for both leagues, or how does that work? So there's still some logistics to figure out. Overall, I think it's a positive thing. I think it gives the players a lot of options. I think it increases probably the level of play in the OHL. I think it probably still makes the rich teams richer. I think if you have a team that consistently wins, that has the best rink, that has sold out arenas every time, I think players are going to be drawn there, and want to develop there. So I'm hoping it kind of evens out teams a little bit, but I think it probably helps everyone and helps the rich teams. You know who I'm talking about. They wear green and they play down in Western Ontario. I think it continues to help them out.
I think it's going to benefit Windsor the most, to be honest.
It could, yeah.
Because they're right by the border,
Absolutely.
So an NCAA team can come right across, watch the games, keep track of their players.
Yeah. I mean, they have huge scouting departments anyway, so you could be right, but it's a very, very...
What about the teams in the States, like Saginaw?
Yeah, you wonder if those guys get a leg up or what the deal is there. Last thing, sorry, I'm rambling here. The last thing I saw is, because those junior leagues are likely, to see a squeeze with the top players, probably going to the CHL. There's a couple teams that look like they're probably going to put bids in to join the CHL. So one of them is the Muskegon Lumberjacks. And then there was a team from Illinois, I believe, that I can't remember the name of. But Muskegon was, one of the teams that a lot of players end up going to buy their time before the NCAA. So we'll see if there's an expansion of a couple teams into that CHL, because there's only a certain number of roster spots, and you have to be able to fit people in. So I don't know. Sorry if I rambled there, but it is newsworthy, and I'm intrigued to see where that all goes, because I think it can benefit the players. I think it can benefit the league as well.
Yeah.
So interesting times ahead.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyways, should we get back to some Pete's news and highlight their week ahead? It was 4 games last week. The boys deserve a little bit of a breather after that. So 2 more games this week. What do you got on tap for us, Matty?
Yeah, so Owen Sound makes the trip down to Peterborough. It's the second meeting this time between these teams. Last one was a 7-2 Owen Sound one, but if you remember, it was 2-2 in the third period. And then they went off for those 5 goals in like the span of 4 minutes.
Yep.
They're Owen Sound. It's hard to put a finger on what their team is, because they kind of play really well and then they kind of get smoked. They're not very, but they're playing more consistent now. So they're kind of finding their game a little bit. They actually just beat Kitchener in overtime. So they do have the ability to beat those top teams. But you can catch them definitely on an off night and you can beat them. This isn't a high-ranked Western Conference team this year. They're kind of rebuilding. They lost a lot of players. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. The former Pete, Sam McHugh, actually leads their team in goals with 10. They have Connor Smith on their team, but the rumor is that he might not play because he's dealing with an injury right now, which is probably, the forwards are probably happy with that, because they don't have to worry about going into the corners with him.
Yeah, he is a large man.
But also remember, they have Carter George in net, and he is a top goalie. He got drafted really high.
Probably getting a look from the World Juniors, I would imagine.
Yeah. And potentially other teams that might pick up a goalie for a run.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting. It's a beatable team.
Yep.
If they come out, play the right way, which I'm sure they're motivated to do. You want to get your first win on home ice. So I'm intrigued by this one. I think it could very well be a win for them.
Yep.
But I think you're going to have to earn your goals in this one because of their goaltending.
Absolutely.
And then they go to Kitchener the next night, which will be a tough game. They've only lost 6 games this season, but 2 have been in the last week. And they're led up front by, I'll never say his name right, but Mischilovic and Romano.
Misaljevic,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah. And they're both in the top 20 in OHL scoring with 12 goals each. But their team's very balanced. They have a lot of guys that have scored at least 1 goal or 2 goals. So they're not a team that relies heavily on one line. They can beat you in multiple ways. They don't give up a lot of goals. They play physical. Kitchener's always a well-run program.
Yeah, absolutely.
With a lot of resources and a lot of support.
Yeah, they're sold out every year. Yeah.
So it will be a tough game, especially in their barn. But we usually do fairly well against Kitchener.
Yeah, it's one of those teams, like London, that we kind of get up and play pretty well against. So hopefully again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So two games against Western Conference teams.
Love it.
Would love to see 2 wins.
Yep.
I think it's doable.
I think it is too.
You're going to have your full, I think, lineup pretty much, depending on if Young and Jenkin get back from injuries. McIntyre will be out, but then you still have your 3 overage spots, so Lefebvre should be in on the first one.
Yep.
Maybe rest McIntyre, get a fresh body in for the next game.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes, but I think it's a promising week for the Petes.
I agree.
They can put everything on the line in 2 games because they don't have games after that.
Agreed. Yeah, let's get a couple more wins.
Yeah.
I am ready to go. I felt, as you can tell, super fired up and happy for the boys for that first win. Let's keep those good vibes going and let's win on home ice now.
Yeah.
And then down in Kitchener and show those fans what kind of team we are.
Yeah.
But anyways, that is our show for today. Thank you for listening. As always, it's our pleasure to bring you guys Pete's news, and it's more fun to talk about them when they do win. So you guys get out there, support the boys. They absolutely feed off that. Your energy can help them lead to better play and more wins. You can make a difference. I 100% believe that. And we love bringing you the news and opinions. So thank you for tuning in. We're going to post our video as always on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, and on Spotify as well. We will have the info for you on our Facebook page and our Instagram page, which is at 4PTB, Pete's sake. So as always, look for it there. And we want you to come support the boys tomorrow night, Thursday, for another win. So thank you for tuning in. And as always, go Pete's, go!